Well, today I'm talking about caffeine metabolism and really answering the question, are you a slow caffeine metabolizer? So all of us have experienced caffeine. Some of us feel great when we consume caffeine. Some of us don't feel so good. And the most popular form of caffeine that we consume in our society is through coffee. And there's been a lot of clinical studies done on coffee, and most of them very favorable, showing that coffee and caffeine consumption improves brain health, turns on fat burning, helps stabilize blood sugar levels, particularly coffee when we're talking about blood sugar because of the chlorogenic acid and caffeic acid. It helps improve bowel movements, right? So it helps stimulate peristalsis in the gut, and also can help turn on autophagy, where our body breaks down old damaged cellular debris, old damaged mitochondrial debris, and recycles them and actually turns up the resilience of the cell, creates new cellular organelles. So a lot of amazing benefits. But of course, there's about a quarter of the population that really does not do good at all on caffeine. They struggle to metabolize it, break it down. And so there's about 2/3 of the population that a certain amount of caffeine they do really well with. In fact, great health benefits, and they feel a lot better and actually can help prevent chronic disease. But again, there's roughly about a quarter to a third of the population that may struggle on caffeine, really needs to consider the dosage, the amount that they consume. And I'm one of those people. I cannot handle a lot of caffeine at once, like the standard dose, 100 milligrams or so at once. I can feel too anxious. My heart can race. I'll crash hours later. And that's because of my caffeine metabolism. The way that my body, my genetics metabolizes caffeine is different than other people. We're going to talk about that today. So first, before we get into that, let's talk about what caffeine is. It's a bitter, white, crystalline, water-soluble compound called a methylxanthine alkaloid. It's closely related to the adenine and guanine contained in DNA. So it's very close to these bases that we find in DNA. And it's defined as the most commonly consumed psychoactive drug on the planet because obviously it impacts our brain, our mood, right? It impacts neurotransmitters. And, that's really the main mechanism, is how it impacts adenosine, which is kind of a calming, almost like a break on the brain, similar to GABA. It's helps to calm the brain and can induce sleepiness. And caffeine works on that. And then it helps to activate dopamine, which gives us drive and motivation and energy and pleasure. And so it works on that. Now, caffeine is naturally occurring in over 60 plants, including, of course, coffee, but also tea, like green tea, obviously. Black tea has caffeine. A lot of different teas have caffeine. Cacao, right, or chocolate has caffeine. Kola nuts and guarana berries as well all have caffeine in them. So 85% of Americans drink at least one caffeinated beverage each day. We know that caffeine, in our nerve system, we have synapses, little gaps in between neurons. And inside of those, that's where the neurotransmitters are communicating. And there's a neurotransmitter called adenosine. And so adenosine, what it does, it binds to adenosine receptors and inhibits the neurons and signals the brain that it's time for rest. So it affects energy levels, causes sleepiness. Caffeine competes with adenosine for its receptors, essentially blocking adenosine from binding to them. So caffeine is called an adenosine antagonist. So it blocks adenosine from interacting with its receptors. And because now it's not interacting with its receptors, we don't get that sleepiness, right? And why does one person, have greater amounts of adenosine possibly, or, greater affinity for adenosine? Adenosine actually is really important for provoking deep sleep, right? Helping us with very restorative sleep. So it's very important for that. But of course, during the day, we don't want to have sleepiness. Normally, for a lot of people, they notice really good wakefulness and some adenosine inhibition by getting movement in, by getting out in the sun. So getting good quality sun exposure early in the day can help reduce adenosine activity and as well as the exercise, like I said, cold showers or cold water, you'll notice a lot of wakefulness because that acts as an adenosine antagonist as well and reduces adenosine levels. And then of course, caffeine, right? So, if you're not doing those other things, I would recommend that getting some cold water, even if it's just cold water that you get from your sink and you just kind of spray it into your face, right? Or splash it on your face. That alone will create, it'll activate some cold shock receptors, will activate adrenaline levels, and will help block adenosine. Getting sun exposure, getting out for a walk in the morning, early in the day, getting good sun exposure early, getting movement early can be really helpful. And so by blocking adenosine, right, when you can do it again with some of those other activities, but of course with caffeine as well, which is what caffeine does, it stimulates the neurons. It stimulates particularly dopamine, which affects muscle control, pleasure, pain, and emotions. So those dopamine receptors become more active when we block adenosine. Adenosine and dopamine are opposites, right? Adenosine slows down brain activity and promotes sleepiness. Dopamine activates brain activity, right? Dopamine helps give us a lot of creative thoughts, helps us have drive towards goals and getting stuff done. But dopamine will also reduce our sleepiness, right? So if we have high levels of dopamine late, like in the evening or at night, we're not going to be able to sleep well, right? We're not going to get good quality deep sleep. It's going to block melatonin production. We're not going to recover well, and we're not going to drain and detoxify our brain. And so it's important that, we have lower levels of adenosine early in the day, and then adenosine should build up in the evening, particularly after dark. And then dopamine, we want higher early in the day and then lower in the evening. And caffeine can help with that if we obviously take it at the appropriate times. We don't want to take it in the evening because that will stimulate more of the dopamine, which will reduce our deep sleep. Now, let's talk about some different genes and enzymes. We know that the CYP12 enzyme or cytochrome P450 1A2 enzyme is involved in phase 1 metabolism of several xenobiotics, including caffeine, aflatoxin B1, acetaminophen. It also metabolizes endogenous compounds such as bilirubin, melatonin, and estrogens, right? So this is kind of the first phase of liver detoxification. The AA variant of or allele of the CYP12 enzyme is the fast metabolizer of caffeine. So it gets it out of the system fast. There's also an AC variant, which is more of a medium caffeine metabolizer. And then there's a CC. The CC is slower caffeine metabolizer. And so, people that are slower at metabolizing caffeine can't take too much caffeine at once, or they get, their heart can race, they can get anxiety, sweating, right? They just don't feel good, right? And they feel overstimulated, right? Whereas the AA is a very fast metabolizer, so the caffeine will wear down quickly. All right, they take it, they get their, wakefulness, but then they may need, another cup, or they just have, it goes through their system pretty quickly. So things that speed up CYP12 enzyme activity, in particular, being around pollution and smoking can speed up that process. So that's something that we need to consider. Somebody that's smoking and, it's just activating, because the body, the liver, it has to put out a lot of smoke, let's say. It's got to deactivate a lot of toxins. So it's that the CYP12 enzyme is increased when that's the case. Now, other things are vitamin C rich foods and cruciferous veggies, right? So if you are a slow metabolizer, then you may consider, taking in more cruciferous veggies and vitamin C rich foods like lemon, right? Maybe having some lemon water with your coffee, for example, will help to increase the caffeine clearance. So therefore you have less anxiety, heart racing, maybe blood pressure problems, things like that could occur if you're consuming too much caffeine. Now, decreasing caffeine clearance, things that help slow it down and keep it in the system faster. For some of you guys, if you're noticing like you take it and then, a few hours later, you just feel like, gosh, I need another hit of caffeine. Um, then you may consider consuming things like quercetin, turmeric, or maybe taking supplements with these, or having herbal teas with, for example, chamomile, dandelion, St. John's wort, peppermint, cumin. Those things all can have a positive effect as far as decreasing the caffeine clearance, keeping it in the system. Now, if you're already a slow metabolizer, those things can actually, again, cause more of an issue. Now, I will say that those foods have a very minimal impact for most people. They don't notice much effect. Taking cruciferous veggies, they don't really feel a huge effect as far as it increasing the caffeine clearance. If they drink chamomile tea with their coffee, they don't necessarily notice a big difference with decreasing caffeine clearance, but some people are a little more responsive than others. So these are some things to consider. Again, things that increase caffeine clearance are going to be, positive things are going to be vitamin C rich foods, cruciferous veggies. So taking vitamin C with it, cruciferous veggies, or perhaps you're taking a supplement with like sulforaphane in it, or broccoli sprout. That's going to help increase caffeine clearance, increase those CYP1A2 or A12 liver enzymes, right? Those things increase that. Things that decrease it: quercetin, turmeric, cumin, dandelion, chamomile, St. John's wort, peppermint. Okay. But again, it's kind of minimal as far as the impact. It's not a huge needle mover, those things on CYP1A2 liver enzymes, but it does have some impact. Now, medications that impact caffeine metabolism, these are definitely things that have a larger impact. So that is going to be, these things can either, increase caffeine half-life, like for example, oral contraceptives may double caffeine half-life, especially during the luteal phase, right? So if you're taking birth control pills during that luteal phase, which is the second half of the menstrual cycle after ovulation, they can double the half-life of the caffeine, meaning keeping it in the system longer. So you got to remember that. Other things that have an impact: stimulants, so Ritalin, Adderall, right? Things like that definitely have an impact. You have quinolone antibiotics, asthma medications, right, which are steroids, diuretics, anti-anxiety medications are going to kind of slow it down. Antidepressant medications as well, you're not going to notice as much of an impact. Anticoagulant medications and heart medications. These can all they can either increase or decrease the half-life, or increase or decrease the impact that you're going to notice. So if you are consuming a lot of caffeine and you're taking these medications, talk with your prescribing doctor about possible interactions with those and what you need to look out for. Now, another gene pathway that is impacted with caffeine metabolism is the adenosine pathway, particularly the ADORA2A receptor. Okay. And so the ADORA2 or ADORA2 gene is the adenosine A2 receptor gene. It's a G protein coupled receptor that is a major target of caffeine, right? That's what it's impacting. Of course, it's binding up that receptor, so adenosine doesn't bind to it. And that receptor is important for regulating myocardial oxygen consumption, coronary blood flow, and central nervous system neurotransmitters. Certain variations in that gene play a large role in how caffeine impacts sleep, particularly the T allele increases anxiety. Okay. So if you're consuming caffeine, you may have more anxiety with that. And the C allele can have more sleep impact, right? So if somebody's taking caffeine and they've got the T allele, they may potentially have more anxiety. If they have the C allele, okay, they may have more impact on sleep, particularly if they're taking it later in the day. If they're taking caffeine later in the day and they have the C allele for the ADORA2 gene, A2, ADORA2 gene. I always say it wrong, but it's the adenosine A2 receptor gene. So ADORA is kind of the acronym, right? Or the condensed form for the adenosine A. So it's the ADORA2 gene. Now there's another one called the ADA gene, which is the adenosine deaminase gene. Okay. That metabolizes adenosine, right? So it breaks down adenosine in the synapse, the gap between the neurons. So obviously the faster it metabolizes adenosine, the less impact adenosine has. The slower it metabolizes, the stronger the impact adenosine has. The G allele is the major, the A allele is the minor. The A allele is associated with 35% reduction in adenosine clearance. So it doesn't break down the adenosine as quickly, the A allele of the ADA, the adenosine deaminase gene. And so when it doesn't break it down as fast, you get more sleepiness, but it also improves your deep sleep. These people tend to be able to sleep very easily. For example, they can fall asleep real easily on a plane. These are the kind of people that are like, they're not bothered by a lot of noises. They're not very sensitive sleeper. They sleep very, very deep, but they can have more feelings of sleepiness, lethargy, and fatigue throughout the day as well. And they can have more of a dependence on caffeine, right? So those people, can be impacted by that. And caffeine can be, one of the things that really benefits them. And so all of us kind of have a different, that ways that we metabolize caffeine, and our caffeine threshold, can be different. I don't recommend more than 2 to 3 cups, or let's say 250 milligrams of caffeine spread out throughout the day for anybody. Okay. And for some people, they need a lot less, maybe 50 milligrams max. Okay. And if you're dealing with chronic fatigue and a lot of issues like that, actually just avoiding it altogether for a period of time and allowing your body to heal, recover, and develop natural energy and resilience is usually the best thing you can do. But for performance enhancement, and that's really the way I look at caffeine, it is a performance enhancement tool, right? It's a neurotropic, right? So it helps improve brain function, memory, mental clarity, cognitive acceleration, your ability to think sharply and quickly. And so it can be very beneficial when taken strategically. You don't want to create a dependence on it. Okay. And I think taking a caffeine holiday, like once a week, right? One day a week, where you either, significantly reduce the amount of caffeine you consume or completely come off of it altogether, is very advantageous, because the more caffeine you consume, the more adenosine your brain will start to make, right? So your nervous system says, oh, okay, well, I can't get adenosine. I'm not getting the activity of the adenosine activating these adenosine receptors. So I might need to make more adenosine or more adenosine receptors. And that's why people will need more and more and more caffeine, because they, the same amount that gave them the same amount that gave them the concentration and mental clarity that they had, the week before, is not going to give them the same impact, the next week. And this is why cycling it or taking caffeine holidays can be really helpful. Taking at least one day where you reduce it a lot can be very helpful for improving your overall sensitivity to caffeine. Now, if you're interested in getting your genetics tested, looking to see if you have the ADORA2 gene, if you have the CYP12 gene, right? A12, like we talked about, which variants you have. If you're a slow, fast, medium metabolizer, then check out 3x4 Genetics. We actually offer this on our website, and my team will work with you. And actually, the cool thing about this is it really breaks down all the genes and all the different pathways to see how well you are, as far as genetically, how well you are at buffering oxidative stress, at inflammation, at dealing with caffeine, at dealing with histamine levels, right? It looks at all of that and creates really nice templates and a full actionable report. And you'll work with, one of our health coaches to actually go through that and help create an actionable plan, personalized actionable plan to maximize your genetic health. So you guys can look at that if you want. We'll have links below this video and in podcast notes that you can take a look at. Now, if you are consuming coffee as your caffeine source, this is what I recommend. Number one, waiting 90 minutes after you wake up to consume it. This is where a lot of people go wrong. They consume coffee, caffeine immediately after waking. And that's not what you want to do, because when you wake up in the morning, you naturally should have more wakefulness hormones like cortisol and epinephrine, norepinephrine. elevated, right? That gives you wakefulness. And you actually want to train your brain and your nervous system to not depend on something on the outside to create wakefulness. And so you should naturally have this cortisol awakening response. And it's going to be, your cortisol levels are going to be higher for the first 90 minutes after waking up to give you that wakefulness. So you don't want to overstimulate your system early, right? Again, you should normally have some of these stimulatory hormones. Therefore, you take the coffee about 90 minutes after. That's when the cortisol starts going down anyways. And that way you can kind of maintain that wakefulness, for several hours later. That's the first thing you want to do. Second thing, add in a pinch of salt. Salts, electrolytes, sodium, so critical for good health. Coffee is considered a diuretic, and it can deplete you of some of these electrolytes. Salt will help keep your energy levels high, will help balance your adrenals and support your brain. So adding in just a little bit of salt, just a pinch of sea salt is what you want to do here. You can add in some healthy fats like some MCT oil if you would like, and that will help with ketone production. I particularly would recommend like a C8 MCT oil, which will help with ketone production and provide a great fuel source for your brain if your blood sugar is going down, and will also help blunt overstimulation of caffeine because, it's going to help keep your blood sugar more stable. So you're going to notice that. You're going to notice that the caffeine just has a more balanced effect when you do that. Taking magnesium with coffee, right? This is important, especially for the people that are fast metabolizers. This is a game changer. People that are fast metabolizers go through magnesium really quickly, right? Fast caffeine metabolizers, when they take the caffeine, they deplete up magnesium. So taking some magnesium with your coffee, whether you're taking, capsule form or like an unsweetened powder or something like that, take it with your coffee. That's going to help. For a lot of people, they also like to use coffee to help stimulate their bowels. And coffee is great as a bitter. It helps stimulate the liver, really helps flush the liver, helps stimulate peristaltic activity in the gut. Magnesium will really help with that as well and support that. So magnesium, taking that with coffee, it's a game changer. If you feel like you don't get great benefits from coffee, you can try that out. And then drinking the right type of coffee. You want to make sure you're getting an organic, mycotoxin-free, shade-grown coffee. Why? Because number one, coffee is the most pesticide, herbicide-laden plant that's out there. So if you are not getting it organic, you're getting a ton of chemicals and toxins. So make sure you're getting organic. Mycotoxin-free is very important as well because coffee naturally grows, mold targets coffee beans, right? And so you want to make sure that it's tested to be free of mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are going to cause major stress in your system. They are a potent carcinogen. And also on top of that, they really cause your liver to have to function at a higher level and can cause more brain fog and more fatigue when you're drinking your coffee. So I like to make sure that my coffee is tested to be free of mycotoxins. And the shade-grown coffee also is less acidic. And so it tends to be more palatable and easier on your stomach. So that's what you're looking for. And there's a lot of people out there that they drink coffee and it's like, it just burns up their stomach. They get acid reflux. So getting the shade grown is a game changer for a lot of people when it comes to being able to tolerate the coffee, just drinking it alone. So that's why I like Life Boost coffee. Guys, if you're listening to this podcast, check out the show notes. I have a special offer, 50% off now. If you're watching this on video, the link will be below the video on YouTube. So check that out. That will save you up to 50% or over 50%, I think, on Life Boost coffee. It's great coffee. Tons of 5-star reviews. People love this. It's USDA certified organic, shade grown, mycotoxin free, low acid, and easy on the gastrointestinal system. So really good stuff. And then the C8 oil that I put into my coffee, right? When I have it, well, I don't typically, I don't actually usually put this in unless I have coffee like around midday, right? Right around my eating window. That's when I'll put this in. However, using C8 MCT oil during your fasting window, even though it is some calories, it's not going to impact your insulin and your blood sugar. So it's just going to turn into ketones. For a lot of people, they feel great taking this. For me, I just drink black coffee in the morning if I drink it in the morning. I don't always do it. I take caffeine holidays, but when I do use it, I use it for, again, performance enhancement, higher levels of, cognitive acceleration, thinking sharply and quickly, and better focus. Then I usually just drink it black, okay, with a little bit of salt in it for the minerals, and I'll take, magnesium supplements around it. However, if I take it around midday or shortly, I typically never drink coffee after 3 p.m., but if I'm taking it somewhere, around my eating window, then I like to put in some C8 MCT oil in there, which turns immediately into ketones. Great fuel source for the brain, really helps create a smoothness with the coffee and the caffeine. And so it's just great, helps suppress appetite, cravings, things like that. Provide this amazing fuel source for your brain to function at a really high level. So guys, check that out. We'll have links in the show notes again. And you can check that out and check out the discount on the Keto Brain as well. You can use a coupon code Jockers10 at checkout on our store if you want to check out that Keto Brain. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this training, learn more about caffeine metabolism here today. And also, hopefully, I inspired you to take a caffeine holiday from time to time if you're not already doing that. I think that's really advantageous to get the best benefits from caffeine. You want to cycle it and reduce your consumption from time to time, maybe on weekends, times when you're not really trying to produce and perform at a high level. Just reducing your consumption is going to help improve the sensitivity of your brain and your neurotransmitters when you do consume coffee or caffeine, in a future date. So doing that from time to time can be really advantageous for you. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and we'll see you guys in a future online training. Be blessed, everybody.